In the sheltered valley of Haven's Hollow, the seasons announced themselves not on the calendar at the general store, but in Esther McCabe's garden. Spring was the sharp green scent of new mint and the timid unfurling of feverfew. Summer was a riot of brilliant echinacea and the honeyed perfume of chamomile basking in the sun. Autumn brought the earthy aroma of drying roots and the deep wine-red blush of hawthorn berries. And winter was the quiet, patient sleep of the earth, a silence Esther understood profoundly. At 68, Esther was a woman who had become part of the landscape she tended. Her hair, once the colour of dark soil, was now a cascade of silver braided and pinned in a simple, practical coronet. Her face was a roadmap of a life lived outdoors, etched with fine lines by sun and contemplation. Her hands that stained with earth and tinctures moved with a grace and certainty that spoke of a deep, innate knowledge. To the townsfolk, she was a quiet fixture, the solitary woman at the edge of town who sold herbal remedies, salves and teas. They knew her work was good. Her poultice could draw the infection from a nasty wound better than anything, and her willowbark tea could soothe a fevered brow. But they held her at a gentle distance, a mixture of respect and a faint unspoken suspicion for a knowledge that did not come from a book with a fancy leather cover. Esther preferred it this way. Her solitude was a garden of its own, carefully cultivated over 20 years. It was a high wall she had built around a past she had left behind in the gaslit streets of Philadelphia. There, she had not been a simple herb woman. She had been Esther McCabe, a respected botanist and researcher, a woman who had published papers on the medicinal properties of North American flora, a woman whose groundbreaking work on a new heart tincture derived from foxglove had been stolen by her male mentor, Dr. Alistair Finch. He had taken her research, published it under his own name, and when she tried to protest, he had masterfully discredited her, painting her as a hysterical, overambitious assistant. He had risen to fame and fortune, while she, professionally ruined and personally betrayed, had fled west, seeking a place where her knowledge could be practiced quietly, honestly stripped of the politics and ego of men. Her silence was not one of grief, but of a deep, weary mistrust of the world's grand institutions. The first stone tossed into the placid pond of her life was the arrival of Dr. Marcus Thorne. He was not a villain like Finch. He was a young, earnest doctor from Boston, full of modern ideas and a suitcase full of gleaming instruments and bottled patent medicines. He set up a practice in the town's vacant office, his polished sign a stark contrast to the weathered wood of the buildings around it. He was charming, confident, and he spoke of germs and contagions and scientific progress. The town, weary of the unpredictable nature of frontier life, was mesmerized. He represented certainty, a modern answer to ancient fears. Esther watched his arrival with a practiced neutrality. She had seen men like him before. They meant well, but they often placed more faith in the labels on their bottles than in the symptoms before their eyes. She continued her work tending her garden, making her remedies, and offering them to those who still sought her out. The second, more significant stone was the arrival of the Cartwright family. It was a young couple, David and Amelia, and their 6-year-old daughter, Lily. David was a carpenter, hired to help repair the old town mill. Amelia had a warm, open face and a ready smile, and Lily was a sprite of a girl with dandelion fluff hair and eyes the colour of a summer sky. They brought a fresh, hopeful energy to the hollow, Amelia, drawn to the vibrant beauty of Esther's garden, was one of the few who sought her out, not from need, but from simple curiosity. She would stop by on her walks, asking about the names of flowers and the uses of herbs. Esther found herself, much to her own surprise, softening in the warmth of the young woman's friendship. And in Lily, she saw a flicker of a future she had long ago given up on the passing down of knowledge, the bright, inquisitive mind of a child. Lily loved the garden. She would follow Esther, her small hands, gently touching the leaves of the lamb's ear, marvelling at its softness. "It feels like a little secret," Lily whispered one afternoon, and Esther had smiled a genuine, unburdened smile. The idyllic summer came to an abrupt end as autumn began to chill the air. A cough settled into the town, a dry, rasping thing that seemed to catch in the chest and refuse to leave. It took hold of Lily with a particular viciousness. Her laughter faded, replaced by fits of coughing that left her small body trembling and breathless. Amelia, her face etched with worry, took her to Dr. Thorne. He listened to Lily's chest with his stethoscope, his brow furrowed with concern. He diagnosed it as a severe bronchial inflammation. He prescribed a strict regimen of bed rest and his most expensive tonic, a dark syrupy liquid that came in a handsome green bottle with a fancy label promising pulmonary restoration. But Lily did not get better. She grew weaker. The cough deepened, and a fever set in, leaving her delirious and frail. Amelia and David spent their savings on bottle after bottle of Dr. Thorne's tonic. The doctor would visit his face, a mask of professional sympathy, and assure them that these things took time, that the scientific process was at work. Esther heard the updates in the worried whispers at the general store. She saw the mounting fear in Amelia's eyes when she passed her on the street. One crisp evening, Esther could bear it no longer. She gathered a small basket containing a tin of her strongest lungwort and mullein tea, a jar of pine resin salve to rub on the child's chest, and a small bundle of dried elderflowers. She walked to the Cartwright's small rented house. She found a scene of quiet desperation. David sat at the table, his head in his hands. Amelia was by Lily's bedside, wiping her brow with a cool cloth. The child was alarmingly pale, her breathing shallow and ragged. Dr. Thorne had just left, leaving another bottle of his tonic and instructions to keep the faith. Amelia Esther said softly from the doorway. Amelia looked up, her eyes hollow with sleeplessness. "Esther, I don't know what to do. He says we must be patient, but she is fading before my eyes." Esther placed the basket on the table. "This is an old remedy for the lungs. The tea will help soothe the cough, and the salve will help her breathe." Before Amelia could respond, the door opened again. Dr. Thorne stood there, having forgotten his medical bag. He saw Esther, saw the basket of herbs on the table, and his friendly demeanour vanished, replaced by a cold professional fury. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "Mrs. McCabe, I am treating this child. Her care is a delicate scientific matter. I will not have it interfered with by folk superstitions and garden weeds." Dr. Esther replied, her voice calm, "And even these are not weeds. This is mullein, which has been used to clear the lungs for centuries. This is lungwort. The name itself speaks to its purpose. The name speaks to peasant ignorance," he snapped. "We live in an age of progressive chemistry and proven formulations. What you are doing is not only foolish, it is dangerous. You are preying on this family's desperation with your snake oil." He turned to Amelia. "Mrs. Cartwright, as Lily's physician, I forbid you from using any of this concoction. If you do, I will no longer be responsible for her care. The choice is yours, science or witchcraft." He picked up his bag and left the threat hanging in the air like a toxic miasma. Amelia looked from the expensive, unopened bottle of tonic on the nightstand to the humble basket of dried herbs on the table. She looked at her daughter's fragile form. She was a woman caught between two worlds, the promising, authoritative world of modern medicine and the quiet, ancient world of natural wisdom. Torn and terrified, she chose the doctor. She pushed the basket back toward Esther. "I'm sorry, Esther," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I have to trust him. He's a doctor." Esther nodded, her heart aching not with insult, but with a profound sorrow for the child. She picked up her basket and walked home, the wall around her past, rebuilding itself brick by painful brick. She had tried to intervene. The world had rejected her knowledge once more. Over the next week, Lily's condition became critical. The entire town spoke of it in hushed tones. Dr. Thorne's confidence began to fray. He was seen pacing outside the Cartwright house, his professional veneer cracking. He began to subtly shift the blame. He told the sheriff that the child's constitution was unusually weak. He told the storekeeper that the family's living conditions were likely unsanitary. And he began to escalate his campaign against Esther. He spoke of the dangers of unregulated herbalists, of uneducated women who meddled in things they didn't understand. The old faint suspicion the town held for Esther began to curdle into active mistrust. People who had once bought her headache powders and burn salves now crossed the street to avoid her. The word witch, which Thorne had used in anger, began to be whispered in earnest. The sheriff paid her a visit. "Esther, Sheriff Brody said, standing uncomfortably on her porch. Dr. Thorne has lodged a formal complaint. He's concerned you are practicing medicine without sanction. I'm telling you as a friend, stay away from the Cartwrights, for your own good." The accusation was a ghostly echo of Dr. Finch's words from 20 years ago. The same professional arrogance, the same dismissal, the same threat. Esther felt the old wound tear open. That night, a rock crashed through her front window, shattering the quiet of her home. It was a message. Stay down. Stay silent. But in the darkest hour before dawn, a frantic pounding came at her door. It was David Cartwright, his face a mess of tears and terror. "It's Lily," he choked out. She's not breathing right. Dr. Thorne came. He looked at her, and he said there was nothing more he could do. He said we should prepare ourselves." David's voice broke. "Amelia sent me. We were wrong, Esther. We were so wrong. Please, I am begging you. Can you help our little girl?" Esther looked at the desperate father. She thought of the shattered window, of the town's suspicion, of the professional ruin she had fled. Every instinct for self-preservation screamed at her to close the door. But then she saw the image of Lily, her small hands touching the soft leaves in her garden, her voice whispering, "It feels like a little secret." She could not let that little secret be extinguished. "Bring her to me," Esther said, her voice clear and steady. "Bring her now." They brought Lily wrapped in a thick quilt, a fragile, barely conscious bundle. Adeline's house was transformed from a home into a sanctuary of healing. She lit the wood stove until the main room was warm and steamy. She boiled water and created a steam tent over Lily's head, infusing the air with tinctures of thyme and eucalyptus to open her airways. She brewed a strong dark decoction of elecampane root and licorice, and using a small spoon, she patiently fed the warm liquid bit by bit between Lily's pale lips. She made a poultice of crushed mustard seed and laid it on the child's chest to break up the deep congestion. For 3 days and 3 nights, Esther did not sleep. She was no longer a botanist or a researcher. She was a healer engaged in a primal battle for a child's life. Amelia and David watched their initial hope turning into a quiet, awestruck faith as they saw the depth of her knowledge, the certainty in her every movement. On the morning of the 4th day, the crisis broke. Lily's fever vanished. Her breathing, while still shallow, was even and clear. She woke up, and the first thing she saw was Esther sitting by her bed. "Esther," she whispered, her voice weak but clear. "Your garden. It smells so nice in here." The news of Lily's recovery spread through the town like a wildfire. It was a miracle, they whispered. Dr. Thorne, hearing the news, was incandescent with rage. This was an impossible challenge to his authority. He marched to the sheriff's office. "This is the final straw, Sheriff," he declared. "That woman is a menace. She has endangered a child with her witchcraft. I demand you arrest her for practicing medicine without a license. It is the law, Sheriff Brody." A man of the law was torn. He had seen Lily's decline and he had heard of her miraculous recovery. He walked to Esther's house, his duty weighing heavily on him. He found Esther in her garden, calmly weeding a patch of lavender. Lily was sitting on the porch steps, wrapped in a blanket, breathing the fresh air, her cheeks tinged with a healthy pink. "Esther McCabe, the sheriff," said, his voice heavy. "Dr. Thorne insists I arrest you." Before Esther could reply, Amelia stepped out onto the porch. Her face was no longer fearful. It was fierce. "You will do no such thing, Sheriff," she said. "That man nearly killed my daughter with his expensive tonics and his arrogant pride. This woman," she said, her voice ringing with conviction, "this woman saved her with wisdom and with kindness. If you want to arrest someone for being a danger to this town, you should arrest him." The standoff was broken by the arrival of a wagon. It was Jebediah, the old farmer, from the furthest edge of the valley. He was holding up one of Dr. Thorne's handsome green tonic bottles. "Sheriff," he called out, "my boy's been taking this for his cough just like the doc said, but it never seemed to do much but make him sleepy. This morning I was carrying it out to the barn and I dropped it. The smell. It ain't medicine. It's whiskey and laudanum." A crowd had gathered. The sheriff took the bottle, uncorked it, and smelled. His face hardened. Dr. Thorne's pulmonary restoration tonic was little more than cheap whiskey to dull the senses and opium to suppress the cough, not cure it. It was a dangerous deception sold to desperate people. The reckoning was swift, faced with the healthy living proof of Lily Cartwright and the damning evidence of his own fraudulent medicine. Dr. Thorne's authority crumbled. He packed his bags and left town that very night, his polished sign taken down, his modern certainty exposed as hollow greed. In the weeks that followed, the town of Havens Hollow began to heal, just as Lily had. The people looked at Esther with new eyes. They saw not an eccentric outcast, but a woman of profound strength and wisdom. They came to her now not with suspicion, but with respect. They brought her their ailments, but they also brought her their friendship. They brought her gifts from their own gardens, and they helped her tend hers. Esther found that the wall she had built around her heart had dissolved. The pain of her past was still there, a scar that would never fully fade, but it was no longer a prison. Her knowledge, once a source of betrayal and shame, was now her gift to a community that cherished it. She started teaching Amelia the properties of the herbs, and then other women in the town, ensuring the wisdom would not be lost. Her home was no longer a silent sanctuary of solitude, but a warm, bustling centre of community life. The quiet was filled with questions, with laughter, and with gratitude. Esther McCabe, the exiled botanist, had finally found her true place, not in a prestigious university hall, but in a small, grateful town that she had healed, and that in turn had healed her.